Okay, so just reviewing what we talked about yesterday. We're solving differentials, right? We're solving derivative equations. To do that, we do 4 steps. Everything with a y goes to the left. Everything with a x goes to the right. If it doesn't have an x or a y, it stays on the right. Integrate, antiderivative, both sides. Put a c on the right side. Plug in a point if you're given a point. If you're given a point, plug it in. If not, don't. And then number 4, solve for y. So sometimes we don't have to do all 4 of those steps, but those are the steps that we need to do to solve differential equations. Okay, so we left off on number 6. Like I said, I changed number 6 a little bit, but it's essentially the same type of problem. Okay? Okay, so first step, everything with a y needs to go to the right, or sorry, to the left. Everything with an x needs to go to the right. Okay, so we have dy over dx equals 6y squared over x squared. So let's see, y's are here, x's are here. Okay, so green needs to come to the right, pink needs to go to the left. Okay, so we've done this before, multiply both sides by dx, right? That's the first step. That'll get that stuff over there. So I have dy equals 6y squared divided by x squared times dx, or just dx. So I still have this guy over here. Right? All of this other stuff is good. The green's good. Only got green on the right. But the pink, purple, I want to move to the left. So how am I going to get this guy over here this side? Remember, I have 4 options. To move things from one side to the other, you have 4 options. You can add it, subtract it, multiply it, or divide it. So which of those will get this guy over here to this side? I got to divide it, right? I'm not going to multiply it because it's not being divided, right? That's being divided. It's multiplication, okay? So the opposite is division. So that's where it gets a little bit crazy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, instead of dividing it, I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal, which is the same thing as division. Multiply it by the reciprocal. Okay. Essentially, I'm just dividing it. So I have 6y, oops, not 6y squared, 1 over 6y squared. 1 over 6y squared dy over 1 over x squared dx. Okay. First step done. Second step, antiderivative. Antiderivative. Here's my question. So let's start with the left side, because it's really 2 smaller problems into one. So this side, you guys have done this before. We did this last chapter. How would I do the antiderivative for this? What's the easiest way? There's a couple different ways, but what's probably the easiest way to do antiderivative? Power rule, yeah. How would I use the power rule? Because I can't use it the way it is right now. There's a couple things I need to do before I use the power rule, but you're right, Isaac. I'm definitely going to use the power rule.
Do you have to move the variable on top?
So before, yeah, I have to move the variable to the top, right? You can do that first. So it's going to be 1 over 6 y to the negative 2, right? And then actually 1/6 is actually a guy I can move to the front. Okay? So yeah, I should have done that before. So yeah, those are the 2 steps I'm going to do. 1/6 is going to come to the front because it's just a coefficient. It's multiplying. 1/6 is multiplying times y squared. And then to move it up, I need to make it negative, right? Now I can do now I can do antiderivative, right? Add a power, divide by that same power. So I have 1/6 times. So if I add a power, it's going to be -1 power, right? And then I'm going to divide by -1. But again, I have a fraction there. So dividing by -1 is the same thing as multiplying by -1. They essentially are the same thing, right? So I'm just going to multiply times -1 there. So that makes -1/6 times y to the -1. Okay. Okay, that's that side. Now let's go to the other side.
We don't put make the power positive.
You can, yeah, you can. It's actually a cleaner look to do that. So it'd be 1/6, so it'd be that, yeah. You can do that, absolutely. That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a cleaner look. We'll get to that part, but yeah, you could do that now for sure. That's okay. And then so we're going to go to the other side now. How do I find the antiderivative of this side? Power rule again, right? I don't have a fraction I need to move to the front, but I can move the variable up, right? Power rule says add a power, -1, divide by the same power, but I'm just going to multiply by -1 and then put a plus c. So I get -1 over x plus c. That's step 2. Step 3 says if you have a point, plug it in. I do have a point. So I'm going to plug in -2 for x and 3 for y. -2 for x and 3 for y, because that's what it said to do up here. So -2 for x, 3 for y. Okay. So I get -1/18 equals -1/3 plus c. Add 1/3 to both sides. Okay, combine, let's see. So I'm going to need to multiply this guy times 6. So this is actually 6 over 18. So 1/18, my -1/18 plus 6/18 is 5/18.
-2 was that?
What did I do? Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't plug in. I plugged in -2 for x, so this should be -2 now. Yes, sorry, yep. I plugged in 3 twice. I shouldn't have done that. So this guy is still -1/18. This guy's a negative over a negative, so it's going to be positive 1/2. Subtract a fraction, but it's a different fraction. Okay. So 1/2 is the same thing as 9/18, right? So it's going to be -9/18. So -1/18 minus 9/18 is -10/18, which is the same thing as -5/9. So C is -5/9. That was step 3. Step 4, go back to this guy here and plug in C. -1 over 6y equals -1 over x minus 5/9. Last step, solve for y. How do I solve that guy for y?
You isolate y.
I got to get y by itself, right? So this one's a little tricky. How do I do that? How do I get y by itself?
You just multiply by -6.
So you can multiply by -6, multiply both sides by -6. So we're going to multiply both sides by -6. So the -6 and the -6 will cancel out. So I'll have 1 over y equals -6. I'm not going to do distribute. You can do distributive property, but just I'm not. You guys have done that a million times. Here's the thing, though. I still have y, but it's not by itself. It's a fraction. I want y. I don't want 1 over y. So what do I do now?
Raise the y.
I could, but then that wouldn't be, it still wouldn't be y. I can move this to the top, but it would be y to the -1, and that wouldn't really help me because it's not y. I want y to the first power. I want y to the first power equals. That's what I want. And right now it's y to the -1 equals.
Multiply.
Keep going. Keep going.
Make y multiply itself.
So what do I multiply both? You say multiply both sides by what?
Yeah.
By what?
Y over 1.
So y, so the y. Okay, so y. Okay, so I'm going to put the y there. Okay, so what am I going to get on this side, on the left side? If I do that, what do I get on the left side?
It'll just be 1.
So I get +1. Okay, what do I do now? So y is now over here, right? Y was down there, now it's over here. How do I get it by itself? This is actually the correct steps. You guys are doing it the right way. You just got to keep going. What would I do next?
Can you just divide it by everything else?
Divide it by whatever you don't want. Yep, I want y to stay there, right? Divide it by what I don't want. I don't want -6. I don't want parentheses, this guy here. Because it's all multiplication. -6 divided by -6 makes 1. Parentheses divided by parentheses make 1. So I have y by itself on top like I want, y to the first, over this. And you're done. You don't have to put y to the first. I just put y to the first because just to show that it's not over a fraction. Okay, so this whole thing. That was the calculus part. Everything after that, so everything after that, which I think is probably the hardest part, has nothing to do with calculus. It's not calculus. It's just plugging in points, isolating the variable. Okay? So the calculus part is probably, I don't want to say the easiest, but it's sometimes you get hung up on parts that aren't calculus. Okay? That part, right? All of that stuff right there, including the answer, it wasn't the calculus. It was isolating the variables. That's algebra. You guys did that in Math 1. Okay? Plugging in points, you guys did that in Math 1 and Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, okay? So it wasn't the calculus part. The calculus is only step 2. Step 2 is the only part that's calculus. So actually, not even that. This part right here was calculus. Because above that, we were isolating the dx's and the x's and the y's, right? That part is the calculus. There's only one of the 4 steps that's calculus. Everything else is one of those other steps. Okay? Okay, so flip over to the back. I changed this one up a little bit. So I had sine in there before, but I want you to change this one up a little bit. This is the one I want. The point is almost the same, just make it positive 1 instead of negative 1. Okay. Okay, solve. Find the particular solution. That means solve. First step, everything with an x, everything with a y. So x, x, y, y. The 3 is connected. It's connected to both. It can be connected to the green, and it could be connected either here, or you could connect it here. Either one. I say just leave it because it's 3. Just leave it there. Don't worry about that. Okay. So we need to get the green to the right. Multiply both sides by dx. Okay, I still got a y though. How do I get y to the other side? Divide both sides by y squared. So I get 1 over y squared dy equals 3 sine of x dx. Okay. Again, that part wasn't calculus. The next step is going to be calculus. This is our only step with calculus when we do the antiderivative. Okay, so you got to do antiderivative for both sides. How do I do antiderivative for this guy? Power rule, right? So what is it going to be? So do that. I want you to do, what's the antiderivative going to be for this side? It's going to be negative 1 over y. Yeah, show me. Show me you're going to get negative 1 over y on your paper. Because we've seen this guy before. And if you've seen things before, you don't have to, I don't need you to show me the work on how you get it. Because anything that you kind of see, like we've seen that before. I know the antiderivative of this guy. Then you don't need to. Yeah, it's going to be negative 1 over y. Because it's y to the negative 2. You're going to add a power, divide by the new power, which is really just multiplying, which is that guy right there. Okay. All right, other side. 3 times, again, you can move the 3 to the front. You can move the 3 to the front. It's not part of what we need to do with the antiderivative. What's the antiderivative of sine? Negative cosine. Negative cosine x plus c. So we get negative 1 over y equals negative 3 times cosine of x plus c. Step 2 done. Step 3, what's the next step?
Plug in the point.
Plug in the points. Find out what c is. So we're going to plug in a 1 in for y and a 0 in for x. Cosine of 0 is 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Add 3 to both sides. 2 equals c. Bless you. All right, so let's move this guy down here. So we have negative 1y equals negative 3 cosine of x plus 2 now, because 2 is c. Okay, that's step 3. What's step 4?
Isolate y.
Isolate y. So let me move up here. So kind of like what we did, you kind of have the playbook on this one because it's kind of like what we did in the last one to get y by itself. So I'm going to move up here so I have more room. So 1 over y, negative 1 over y equals negative 3 cosine of x plus 2. So well, what am I going to do to get y by itself? Because it's 1 over y, right?
Multiply both sides by y.
So yeah, I'm going to multiply actually both sides by negative y because I want to get rid of that negative as well. 2 birds with 1 stone. Treat them, I can just do one with one swoop. I can get this guy over here to get rid of the negative. So negative y times negative 1 over y equals 1. Over here I have negative y, 3 cosine x plus 2y, or sorry, not 2y. Why did I put 2y? 2. Don't distribute the y, because if you distribute the y, it's going to be harder for you to do the next step. We want 1y. If I'm trying to isolate something, I don't want more than 1. If I'm trying to get something by itself, I don't want more than 1. Okay? So what's the last step?
Divide everything by negative and everything.
Divide everything, divide it by both sides, or divide by what you don't want. So this is a negative 1, so it's negative 1, negative 3 cosine x plus 2, negative 1, negative 3 cosine x plus 2. So we get y equals that. Now you can distribute the negative 1 since you're just distributing. You don't have to, but it would be 3 cosine x minus 2. Done. Okay. Okay. So that's it. Like I said, that's all there is. Sometimes you have little quirks in there, like with this one and the last one, but essentially it's the same. So the rest of the period, I'm going to give you guys time. We got about 30 minutes. So I'm going to give you guys time to do the practice.